Hi, I'm Daniel Fisher here at Sweetwater Sound. I'm here with Jacob Dupre. We are going to show you synchronization between a DAW and a synthesizer. And for some of you that might be, oh, that's just such a simple basic thing, why are you even talking about that? But for other people it can be tricky, and even us last night we were trying to get something connected and something just wasn't working, and man, when it's like that it's very frustrating.
Yeah, it's an easy thing to get confused about, but once you figure out what you need to do in the DAW and on this side, on the synth side, they talk really well.
They do, and once you get it going. And so one of the secrets that I use is they have a software that's called MIDI Monitor. And so for a Mac, you can use MIDI Monitor, it's literally spelled that way. Or on a PC, they do MidiOX, MIDIOX, and I'm sure there's other freeware as well, but basically what it does is it shows you MIDI on your screen as you're doing it. And I'm telling you, that will just spare you days of pulling your hair trying to figure out why this thing won't work. It's just so great to go, oh, I'm on MIDI channel 2 and this is on MIDI channel 1, or oh, it's not sending clock, or whatever. So today in particular, we are talking about the clock, the MIDI clock. And so what I have here is the Korg Wavestate. It's a very groove-based synthesizer, so I thought it would be good for this example. And over here?
This is Ableton Live.
And what do you got going for us sound-wise today?
Today I've got some internal sounds. There's just a drum kit I grabbed, and then a lead sound from Ableton's internal instruments.
So the first thing you have to do is have a MIDI connection from the computer to the keyboard. And today we decided to do it, since there are 5-pin DIN jacks on this, we decided to do it with actual 5-pin to USB. And so to do that, I'm using the MidiOX by iConnectivity. It's a nice low-cost unit. It has the in and outs over here. It's got the USB, both USB-C and the older style USB. It just works. You just plug it in. Now that we've plugged it in, what do you do on your end to see that connection?
Well, the great thing about that is as soon as you plug it in, Ableton sees it. Mm-hmm. So when you go to Preferences, which I just did here, Live Preferences, you see all your input and outputs for all your MIDI ports, and there it is right there. So literally for us to do this, all I have to do is turn on sync, and that's it. And it's gonna start, the clock is gonna line up, and then sort of I'm controlling that. You know, then my tempo is sort of the main tempo, or the primary tempo.
So because of that, I need to set this unit into a way that's listening. Mm-hmm. And we do that on this particular unit. It's in utility. It's often in global MIDI settings, something like that. But here I'll go to utility, and I've got my MIDI and USB page. And I've gone down to clock, and the clock says that it's internal, which means if I just start playing an arpeggiation, it's going to go. But if I go and set that to external, and do the same exact thing, nothing's going to happen. I'm basically stuck in time. And what I'm waiting for, or what it's waiting for, is a clock from that DAW. So let's just do that real quick just to show it. Mm-hmm. And you'll notice that it is not only sending clock to control this thing, but it's also doing start and stop of it. Mm-hmm. And he's currently got a metronome going. And I think we'll leave that on for now just so you can really hear what's going on.
Yep. So
why is sync important? It's because you would think that something that's computer controlled, if you set it at 110, which I have this at, so my clock is at 110 beats per unit, and his clock is at 110 beats per unit, you'd think if we just ran these simultaneously, they would stay in time, and they do not. That's called jam syncing, when you try to just start two things and hope they stay together long enough for what you need to do. And that works for really short things, but it does not work for any length of time because, man, it drifts. And you think, but they're two quartz-controlled, computers. They're silicon chip computers going at gigahertz. They should be able to do it. They don't. Something about the whole system, I've never been able to just start two things and then come back a minute later and have them on the beat. So it's very important that I come over here and I go to external. Now there's another choice, and that's auto, and that might be good for you. What auto does is it says, look, if I'm not hearing any MIDI clock from somewhere else, I'm going to assume that I'm the MIDI clock. But the moment MIDI clock comes around, this all of a sudden will start reading whatever's coming in externally. The only bad thing about auto is you can fool yourself into thinking that everything's working, but you're not getting MIDI clock, but it goes to internal, and you're like, oh, we're all running, so it must be okay, and it's not. So what happened to us last night? Let's list some of the ones. For me, the first one was on the Mio iConnectivity device here. It says MIDI in and MIDI out, and I wasn't sure if that meant that this was the MIDI out of that or that this was intended to go into the MIDI out. Of course, the one I chose was wrong. So that was one thing that was going against us where nothing would work. What did you have going on over here?
Well, for me, you know, and I'll be honest, Ableton I'm familiar with, but it's definitely not like the DAW that I'm deepest in. But you kind of, once you use a few DAWs, you start to see a lot of the preference menus are kind of similar, and you start to kind of just get that natural flow of it. But it seems like every time I come into Ableton, I see all these lists of all these different things. Like here's Vienna Instruments, which is like a different plugin library that I have, like my controller. At first you just start thinking like, oh, maybe I just need to start switching stuff on. And look, everybody's done that. Doesn't matter how experienced you get. When stuff's not working, sometimes you're just like, okay, let me just see if something happens. You know, so after messing around for not much time, I realized, okay, sync. This is what I need because I'm syncing. It's a clock thing. So that's just kind of the struggle. You just kind of have to learn how the software works, what the preference menu looks like. And a lot of times what you need is just a very simple thing. So you just got to sift through the noise, basically.
So when you're starting, keeping it simple is a big deal, especially, and because here's what'll get you is I had an error over here, he had an error over there, but when he flipped between the two states of your error, it didn't fix the problem. And sometimes when I fixed mine, it didn't fix the problem. Both things had to be right at the same time for this to work. And we did get it, but it was kind of funny watching the two of us standing here, and we're going to explain it to you. And we had a little glitch. So we get it. And so now we're going to show you what the benefit of doing that. And so I'm going to play a little groove again, and then he's going to, on his own, record a drum loop to his own clock. And then we're going to play the two of them together, see how they line up. So as you already heard this is what we'll be using. And now he's going to play something apropos for that.
Go back here. Here's an old pattern. Delete that. I've got my count in. Here we go.
Okay.
Simple.
So now let's just, we're going to both start at the same time. I'm going to press chords and you're going to press play at the same time. You just give me a count. And then, so here's what's going on. I'm using my internal clock. He's using his internal clock. We are doing what's called jam syncing. We're both trying to make this sync happen by both of us starting at the same time. And let's see how long it goes before it starts getting bad.
Okay.
Okay, now we're going to do the same thing, except now I'm going to make my clock be external, so I won't even start till he starts. So as you can hear, the synchronization was perfect, and it will stay perfect till the end of time. Now I'm going to show how when he changes tempo, that everything over here will change its tempo to match that, And even if there are delays that are tempo synced, you're going to hear the delay bend a little bit as it goes in time, but it will even out after a measure or two. So now I'm going to do, we'll do a B flat minor, and you go ahead and start again.
Okay.
So you can hear that whatever changes he does in tempo is exactly reproduced over here, and the only thing that drifts momentarily are the delays, because when you change delay times, you're going to temporarily change pitch. Now, the one thing that we haven't really talked about is the fact that I'm not actually recording to a track, but I could, and that track would be absolutely in sync, but I don't have to. If you're in situations where recording is limited or your time, or you're doing it on something small, you can actually have things that are playing that aren't actually recorded on the DAW. But now he's going to add another track. Mine is still live, but synced to his, and he's going to be able to add a lead over it, and all of it should just stay in absolute perfect time. So we'll go ahead back into D flat again. All right, so now I've picked another sound and a different groove. This has an orchestral groove to it with triplets. So it may or may not work with what you're doing, but you know what? Happy accidents happen all the time, so I'm going to give it a shot. Yeah. So here we go. Well, I hope that gives you a little bit of an example of what we're doing with MIDI sync, how you can try it, some of the pitfalls, but most important, the benefits that you can get. You can do things like this, like completely swap out different grooves or different sequences against other things, and often magic will ensue. If you have any further questions about the Korg Wavestate, the iConnectivity MidiOX, Ableton, please contact your Sweetwater sales engineer. My name is Daniel Fisher.
I'm Jacob Dupre.
Thank you very much for watching.